Hello, my friends. Well, this is a part 2 of my pandemic update, if you will. Or maybe it would be part 1, depending on the other one uploading, which I'm adding a few pictures of my trip up north. I went to Mount St. Helens, we went to Rainier, we had to escape the chaos, and as I mentioned in a previous video, I found this ring in a parking lot, and I didn't mention it in the previous, the one I just made, so somebody asked about it. It's a ring that says Saint Michael protect us, and Saint Michael was the archangel of the apocalypse. It's a pretty heavy duty ring. It's just a copper plated with metal. It's nothing special, but when I found it, I thought about, sometimes these little things happen to us that make us wonder about where our priorities are during an event like this. Because I'm not a Christian, I'm not a Catholic, obviously, but I believe that all of the ancient symbolism, angels, trumpets, and all of this have some sort of a significance within our, culture, within history. And when I was camping, my wife, we got some service briefly, and she said, I guess there was an earthquake in Utah which took out some servers. So when I got home, I checked it out. It was a 5.7 earthquake, and this earthquake apparently knocked the trumpet out of the hand of the angel that was on top of the Mormon temple. And it got me thinking, this earthquake happened around the time when I found this ring, which there are pictures of Michael the archangel holding a trumpet, and it was just the weirdest thing. I thought about how that's kind of an apocalyptic thing. You talk about the 7 trumpets, and I read Revelations when I was like 16, 17 years old, because I was obsessed with learning about the occult and all the weird things, and I thought I might as well read Revelation to understand it. So, anyhow, it sounds like I'm talking about a bunch of biblical stuff, but I'm actually not a religious person at all. But I do have some merit in the earth having its own consciousness, its own awareness, if you will, kind of a Gaian hypothesis. And I'm, on one hand, thinking about the earth striking back against, human nature. And another part of me telling me that this is an opportunity for humans to become better people. And I've been reading several great thinkers' ideas about where we can go from here. And I picked 3 that I really liked, and I wanted to share them with you here. And the first one is by Eric Kleinenberg. He's a professor of sociology and the director of the Institute for Public Knowledge at New York University. He says, "The coronavirus pandemic marks the end of our romance with market society and hyper-individualism. We could turn towards authoritarianism. Imagine President Donald Trump trying to suspend the November election. Consider the prospect of a military crackdown. The dystopian scenario is real, but I believe we will go in the other direction. We're now seeing the market-based models for social organization fail, catastrophically. As self-seeking behavior from Trump down makes the crisis so much more dangerous than it needed to be. When this ends, we will reorient our politics and make substantial new investments in public goods, for health especially, and public services. I don't think we will become less communal. Instead, we will be better able to see how our fates are linked. The cheap burger I eat from a restaurant that denies paid sick to its cashiers and kitchen staff makes me more vulnerable to illness, as does the neighbor who refuses to stay home in a pandemic because our public school failed to teach him science or critical thinking skills. The economy and the social order it helps support will collapse if the government doesn't guarantee income for the millions of workers who will lose their jobs in a major recession or depression. Young adults will fail to launch if government doesn't help reduce or cancel their student debt. The coronavirus pandemic is going to cause immense pain and suffering, but it will force us to reconsider who we are and what we value. And, in the long run, it could help us rediscover the better version of ourselves." And I can't disagree with much of that. There was a little anti-Trumpism in there, and I'm sure people will get triggered by that, but tough fucking shit. The guy put it off as just nothing. It'll be over pretty soon. He really did put people in danger by being ignorant to it. And we really are in a time now where we're going to actually start trusting the experts more. Where a month ago we just laughed at scientists, now people are like begging Dr. Fauci to give them information on what's going on because it's actually happening to them and their families. The next one here is from Tom Nichols. He's a professor at the U.S. Naval War College and author of The Death of Expertise. America, for several years, has become fundamentally unserious country. This is the luxury afforded us by peace, affluence, and high levels of consumer technology. We didn't have to think about the things that once focused our minds: nuclear war, oil shortages, high unemployment, skyrocketing interest rates. Terrorism has receded to the back of being a kind of notional threat for which we dispatch volunteers in our military to the far corners of the desert as the advance guard of the homeland. We even elevated a reality TV star to the presidency as a populist attack on the bureaucracy and expertise that makes the most of the government function. The expertise that makes most of the government function on a day-to-day basis. The COVID-19 crisis could change this in two ways. First, it has already forced people back to acceptance that expertise matters. It was easy to sneer at experts until a pandemic arrived, and then people wanted to hear from medical professionals like Anthony Fauci. Second, it may, one might hope, return Americans to a new seriousness, or at least move them back towards the idea that government is a matter for serious people. The colossal failure of the Trump administration both to keep the Americans healthy and to slow the pandemic-driven implosion of the economy might shock the public enough back into insisting on something from government other than emotional satisfaction. And I think a lot of Americans can't deny that. People just want the emotional satisfaction to point the finger at the other side. And now we have a common enemy. You can call it the Chinese virus, you can call it whatever you want, but the fact is we all face it right now. And the last one I wanted to read, this is from Al-Jan Pu, the director of the National Domestic Workers Alliance and Caring Across Generations. The coronavirus pandemic has revealed gaping holes in our care infrastructure, as millions of American families have been forced to navigate this crisis without a safety net. With loved ones sick and children suddenly home from school indefinitely, they've been forced to make impossible choices among their families, their health, and financial ruin. After all, meaningful child care assistance is extremely limited. Access to long-term care is piecemeal at best, and too few workers have access to paid family and medical leave, which means that missed work means missed pay. This crisis should unleash widespread political support for universal family care, a single public federal fund that we all contribute to, that we all benefit from, that helps us take care of our families while we work, from child care and elder care to support for people with disabilities and paid family leave. Coronavirus has put particular national spotlight on unmet needs of the growing older population in our country, and the tens of millions of overstretched family and professional caregivers they rely on. And my mother is a caregiver. My mom is 70 and she's a caregiver, okay? So she's at risk and the person she works with is at risk. So I understand how fucked up the caregiving situation is. Care is and always has been a shared responsibility, yet our policy has never fully supported it. This moment, challenging as it is, should jolt us into changing that. And there's not a lot I can agree with in there. I mentioned the other day that Trump had failed, and somebody said, oh, quit making this a partisan issue. And I call bullshit on that. I said, you know what? I call Obama out for the stupid shit he did too. It doesn't matter if this is a Democrat or a Republican. This is a time where you should be able to call a person out or a group out for their lack of effort and their lack of taking action. I'm not talking about just Trump. I'm talking about people in general. American citizens who laughed this off, who pretended like it was no big deal. And now we're facing a crisis which is going to unfold anyway. Like I told my brother, he he couldn't believe that I was traveling. And I said, well, there's a difference between going to the beach and going camping. And, hanging out with groups of people, or tourism, and going out by yourself and isolating. And there's no way in hell I'm sitting home for 6 months, so of course I'm going to go out and get the time I can. But I realized that we might be headed for something more severe, a lockdown. It's very possible. And Americans need to be ready for that. And I think that instead of focusing on the negative and all the problems this brings, maybe we should look at what's really important and come together over this. So hopefully you enjoyed what I had to share. And if not, well, oh well. Thanks for listening. Talk to y'all later. Thanks for your support. And, hiccup. I'll talk to you soon. Be well.